Hello there friends, CS News Live here. In today's video we've got a lot of stuff. First, Cadian's move to Astralis, Launders getting scammed, Ropz not liking the Porsche jokes, and a bunch of other pretty exciting news from the world of CS2. Without further ado, let's get straight to it. Let's kick off the episode with Bleed. Do you remember that Nexa joined them after leaving G2? Well, now the Serbian player has been banned according to HLTV. For those who don't know, Bleed is an org backed by influential figures, let's say from Singapore, aiming to build a competitive tier 1 roster for major tournaments on a tight budget. All of it led by the legend Kassad himself. However, they didn't even qualify for the RMR, currently sitting at 58th place in the HLTV rankings and 45th in the Valve's rankings. It seems like some people have already found a scapegoat for this, and that's none other than their coach, who we already mentioned, Kassad. For example, according to one of the most influential insiders and people of the Eastern European scene, Overdrive, giving Kassad money to build a roster was a bizarre choice, since he's been picking some random players for unclear goals while still getting paid for it. Just a reminder though that this is only an opinion and should be taken with a grain of salt. Insider reports also suggest that Bleed is eyeing Neetu from Mousesports NXT as a potential replacement for Nexa, which could be a solid upgrade for the roster. While some players are getting benched, others are planning to return. The Brazilian CS legend Taco promises to come back and put an end to his region's embarrassing losses. And honestly, he sounds pretty convincing, especially considering the rumors about Fallen possibly stepping down, or even Taco forming his own roster, though that's still up in the air. What's for sure though is that our Twitter followers were the first to hear the news. We post there everything before it drops here, so if you want to stay on the loop on the biggest CS updates, make sure to follow us on Twitter or X. Links in the description. If you remember, in one of our previous videos we mentioned that another French org might buy out 3D Max's roster, but the situation is getting worse due to delayed salaries and lack of sponsors. To make things even more complicated, the players' contracts are set to expire just 2 days before the end of the RMRs. Which means that the team could lose their major spot if they qualify, since they won't have any contracted players. However, the players could still compete as free agents. On top of that, the org currently owes about $25,000 to the players and coaching staff, while the buyout clauses in contracts are about $30,000. And my friends, it seems like this lineup just can't catch a break. It's really unfortunate for the players. I just hope that someone will finally sign them, because they look promising. Speaking of roster changes, we can't ignore the most talked about shuffle of the recent days. Kadian joining Astralis to replace Bro. According to Astralis' director, the transfer took only 36 hours, which is honestly lightning fast, and that's basically the reason why we heard no rumors about it. This move immediately sparked major discussions in the community, and for good reason. First off, it's a reunion for Kadian with Yabi and Staven, who left heroic during a difficult time for the team. Despite the drama, Kadian says they've buried the hatchet and they're ready to play together again. However, many are questioning how Device and Kadian will coexist, given that both are in-game leaders and oppers. But the role division was sorted quickly, with Device taken to the op, while Kadian will be the IGL with the rifle. But it's still unclear if Device might start calling by habit, potentially leading to some friction. On the bright side though, Kadian will now lead the team with his native language, which should simplify things. Kassad had an interesting take on the situation, saying that since Heroic couldn't get Device back then, it seems that they've just moved Heroic's roster over to Device. Meanwhile, Richard Lewis jokingly suggested the perfect team-building exercise, saying Kadian should make them run a 32-kilometer marathon to bond. And hey, he might have a point, sports bring people together. When Zanik, Dupree and Magisk joined Vitality, they went on a mountain hike and then won a major. So maybe this marathon could work. Thorin, though, on the other hand, worries that Kadian might struggle to integrate Device into his playstyle, which could prove challenging. And one more important and interesting thing to note, if Astralis qualifies for the major with this roster, it will be Bro, not Kadian, to get the stickers. since Bro was part of the originally registered lineup. So, my dear friends, what do you think of Astralis' roster changes? Can this team bring back Astralis' former glory? Write your thoughts in the comments below. Oh, and guys, here's a fun fact. Just take a look at what Kadian said about Astralis' previous roster.
I think potentially still that they are maybe one piece to the puzzle away from really being good, but they're definitely moving in the right direction. And I think that for them, they have to start making not just semifinals but also finals and potentially lifting a trophy, because if they don't by the end of this year, I think they're going to be looking at each other and say we need to make one more change.
Really fast, what's the one piece? You said they're one piece away. Come on, Kadian, what's the piece?
No comment, no comment. I don't know.
Man, I think Casper knew he'd be joining Astralis. Amazing stuff. But my friends, we still have a lot to talk about, so let's move on. ENCE has made some roster changes after a string of disastrous performances, even in non-tier 1 tournaments. Following a coaching change, ENCE officially parted ways with Goofy, and rumors suggest that Glaive might step away soon. This means ENCE will need to find at least 2 new players, including a captain. And you know what? Nexa and Hooksy are the 2 names to come to mind first, as both are currently teamless, and they both already have chemistry. However, it's unclear if this will strengthen the roster of ENCE. Insiders also report that Neetu is being tested for the team, though Bleed is also eyeing him. To be honest, Kassad's lineup look a bit more promising at this point. Another captain shared his dream. Apex really wants to win the EPL. According to the Frenchman, they haven't lost in the group stages for the past 2 years, and they deserve to be rewarded for that. Vitality can definitely be considered one of the favorites for the tournament, right alongside Navi and Team Spirit, as most other teams have been underperforming to say the least. But the question remains, if Apex wins, will he move closer to retiring, or is he just trolling again? Since we're already talking about Vitality, let's not skip the updated HLTV rankings, where Vitality has reclaimed the top spot, pushing Navi down to 2nd place. The biggest jump this week came from Imperial, climbing to 24th from 35th. M80 also made gains, moving up 4 spots. On the downside, FlyQuest dropped 3, marking the biggest decline in the rankings this week. Speaking of the updates, we can't overlook the topic of CS2. Richard Lewis mentioned that in his opinion, headshots in the new game look way better than the previous one. He also noted that the headshots feel much more satisfying now. However, Reddit users might disagree, as we showed in one of our previous videos where the difference in tick rates and shot smoothness was clearly visible. And also, speaking of our last videos, do you remember how we mentioned that Loba supposedly leaked the operation's release date? Surely some users are now making fun of it. For example, Semphis joked that Valve should call the operation Mission Impossible tick rate 128, and said that all the operations funds should go towards maintaining servers with a good tick rate. Of course, this is all ironic, and the operation will likely focus on something else, but I mean, is he wrong? The tick rate in the new version is indeed strange, and we still don't have a release date. Meanwhile, Valve just keeps working on Deadlock and adding new heroes to Dota 2, which already has a plenty of characters, to be honest. We can only hope the operation drops on the anniversary and is worth the wait. Speaking of Valve and Steam, one well-known analyst and caster, Launders, experienced firsthand how things could go wrong. He got scammed. And yes, this is completely true. He lost all his CS2 skins without receiving a single notification. Fortunately, Valve seemed to take notice of his tweet and introduced a new rule. If you log in from a new device, trades will be disabled for several days on this specific device. The sad part here is that Launders never got his skins back and most likely never will. They were either sold or scattered across various accounts. But he at least was ironic. He said this: being Indian and getting scammed feels like dying to your own molly. Speaking of Indians, we couldn't miss the chance to mention another well-known though infamous Indian, Forsaken. He is now officially allowed to compete at majors again. To remind you, back in 2019, Forsaken was caught using cheats at a LAN, which led to his ban. The player himself hasn't commented on his return yet, but I suppose he's just forgotten about the ban already and moved on to other things. So I highly doubt that he will come back to the pro scene again. And to wrap the news block up, let's talk talk about something just as important. Recently, Ropz gave a big interview where he shared a lot of interesting details, including how he feels about the jokes surrounding his car. To recap, after Ropz bought a Porsche, many people started saying that his stats have dropped because of the new car, like he achieved his goal and that's all. According to Ropz himself, he doesn't get the point of these jokes and he's just a regular guy who loves good food and cars. Like any guy, he wants to own a sports car and not at like 50 years old, but while he's still young, while he can still enjoy it and live life to the fullest. And honestly, I can't agree more. Yeah, he had a slump, but blaming it all on the car is just silly. Plenty of other players have struggled with their stats, but for some reason people decided to blame Ropz, which is both strange and unfortunate. Ropz also addressed the jokes about how he helped Zontex with his PC, which led to Spirit beating Faze in Katowice. People claim that if Ropz hadn't helped, Faze would have won Katowice. To this, Ropz replied that he simply helped because he could, and he knew it would benefit Zontex in that situation. So my friends, Ropz is just a good guy. And lastly, in Ropz's opinion, Navi is currently the #1 team in the world, and it's hard to argue with that as well. If you want to say vitality, please do it in the comments below and have discussions there. And now, in the second part of the video, we will talk about the EPL playoffs so far. First things first, we've already had a big upset. Faze Clan was knocked out in the first round, unexpectedly losing to Complexity 0-2. This marks Complexity's first victory over Faze since 2022, making the result even more remarkable. It all began on Complexity's pick, Anubis. In the pistol round, Complexity tried to surprise Faze with a B split and executed their utility perfectly, but ran into Faze's excellent positioning, leaving Grim in a 1v4 surrounded by opponents. He only managed to take down Brokey before Faze easily secured the first round. The second round also went to Faze as Complexity opted for an eco, and that's when the flawless play from the Americans began. Kerrigan made a mistake in mid and Complexity rushed Palace, turning it into a brawl. But with a better buy and a numbers advantage, the round went their way, and from there they dominated the half. Complexity won 7 rounds in a row and it looked like they might take the rest. However, Faze woke up near the end, securing a few rounds thanks to the solid B-side defense and a 2v2 clutch. After the side switch, things got worse for Faze as they lost the pistol round and the follow-up. Faze tried to stage a comeback with Ropz pulling off an insane 1v4. Then Frozen came through with a 1v3, nearly bringing Faze back. But Complexity responded with a streak of 3 rounds, reaching the map point. Faze tried to fight back but ultimately lost the next round, dropping their opponent's pick. Next was Dust 2, Faze's map. The first half was fairly even, with both teams trading rounds. Faze started with a classic B split in the pistol round. Complexity almost countered it on mid, but they couldn't retake the side, as Faze's aim was on point. However, after that it seemed like Faze disappeared from the map, allowing Complexity to take 5 rounds in a row. Towards the end of the half, Faze finally found their rhythm by securing key positions early in the round, leading to an even scoreline at the halftime. But after the side switch, Faze completely lost control, giving up round after round. Complexity was clearly a step ahead in every aspect, aim, tactics, well, everything, which led to a deserved victory for Complexity, while Faze Clan got knocked out. The other matches were pretty predictable. Team Spirit faced Furia, starting on Nuke, which was the Brazilian's pick. Right from the beginning it was clear that Furia had put some solid work on their T side. The Dragons only managed to get back into the game at 3-1. They went on a 3-round streak but then handed 3 rounds back. This back and forth led to a tied first half, which was honestly a good result for Furia as they switched to the CT side. However, this is where the Brazilians started to falter. Spirit's T side was much stronger, taking rounds in quick succession. Then came the 21st round, where Chopper pulled off a crucial 1v2. Spirit were on map point, and then they just won the map. Next was Anubis Spirit's pick, and it was a bit easier. The Brazilians won the first 2 rounds, but then gave up a 6-round streak to Spirit. They managed to grab 2 more rounds, but it wasn't enough, as Spirit ended the first half with a commanding 2-fold lead. After the side switch, Furia started to come back on the city side, taking round after round. But despite their efforts, the Dragons managed to secure their map pack, sending Furia home to prepare for IM Rio. There was also a match between VP and Heroic. It kicked off on Ancient, Heroic's pick. Initially, VP looked quite solid, winning both the pistol round and the follow-up. But things started to go wrong in the full buy round, as Heroic began racking up rounds almost non-stop. The situation shifted again at 5-2, this time in VP's favor, as they won 5 consecutive rounds. By the end of the first half, the teams were nearly even, with VP leading just by 2 points. However, after the side switch, it became clear why Heroic had chosen this map. VP only managed to take 1 round in the second half, while Heroic secured 8. VP had chances to come back, but first Nerds won a 1v2 clutch, and then Shush did the same, delivering the final blow to Virtus.pro. Next was Dust 2, Virtus.pro's pick, but it felt like it was Heroic's pick, because VP were simply absent. In the first half, VP barely managed to take 3 rounds, despite playing the stronger T side. In the second half, they picked up another 3 rounds, while Heroic went on in a 4-round streak to close out the game, sending VP home. Whether this was due to the upcoming roster changes or just bad luck, it's honestly hard to say. And the final match of the day was the Mongolz versus BIG. The first map was Ancient, the Mongolz pick. It started with an almost successful 1v4 by Techno, but he just ran out of time. After that, BIG secured 3 more rounds, leading 4-0, but then the game shifted, with the Mongolz winning everything they could. For instance, in the 8th round, 9-10 won a crucial 1v3, cementing their dominance. This led to 8-4 in the first half. Things got even worse for BIG when the Mongolz won the pistol round and the force round, which led to 10-4. However, after that the Mongolz started to fall apart, losing round after round and barely managing to win one in return. So we had the overtimes on the first map. And they were incredibly close, with both teams trading rounds, but in the end luck was on the side of the Germans, as they took the Mongolz' map pack. Next came Nuke, and initially it looked like it would be a close one. In the 3rd round, Creambo won a 1v2, but after that, BIG started to crumble, leading to 4-8 in the first half. However, when the Germans got to city side, they still had a chance to come back. But, well, MZNU had other plans. He pulled off an ace in the 2nd round. Granted, it was against an eco, but still an ace. BIG responded with a streak of 4, nearly catching up to the Mongolz. Then, in the 20th round, Blitz pulled off an unbelievable 1v2 clutch with just 13 HP left, pushing the Mongolz closer to victory. And, well, despite all the BIG's efforts, the Mongolz' lead was too large, which resulted in a 1-1 score. The decider was Mirage, and it played out in favor of the Mongolz. They somehow managed to easily win the toughest rounds, like in the 8th round when they pulled off a difficult 2v4. This gave them a lead in the first half. BIG's turn on the T side saw them win a streak of 6 rounds, almost consecutively, but the Mongolz' advantage was too overwhelming, leading to the victory on the deciding map. So nice try BIG, but the Mongolz move on. The 2nd round of the playoffs brought us another intense match. It was an all-American derby, Complexity versus Team Liquid. The match began on Nuke, and frankly, that's where the analysis of the map can end. Liquid just dominated the first half, winning 12 rounds, and then quickly closed it out, giving away only 2 rounds. The map was highlighted by an impressive clutch and a ninja defuse from Yekindar. Next up was Anubis, Complexity's pick, and their strongest map. However, this time they started on the city side, which is generally considered the weaker here. And Liquid took full advantage of it, securing 8 rounds on the T side. Even with that score, Complexity had a chance to come back, if not for Ultimate, who played the game of his life. His aim and precision just unreal, and when an opponent is performing that well, there's not much you can do, even on your best map. In the second half, Complexity couldn't string together rounds, losing their map pick and subsequently the series, and dropping out of the tournament. Another match was Spirit vs Imperial. The first map was Nuke, the Dragon's spec. It started with Imperial winning both the pistol and the force buy, but Spirit responded by taking 4 in a row. The Brazilians then fought back with a 3-round streak of their own, only for Spirit to answer with another series of rounds. This back and forth led to 7-5 at the end of the first half. Spirit switched to the stronger CT side and had a good chance to close out the game, but things didn't go as planned. Imperial stormed through with 5 consecutive rounds, leaving Spirit on the back foot. However, Spirit regained their composure and took 3 rounds in a row, sending the game to overtimes. There, Spirit gave it all, losing only 1 round before responding with a 4-round streak. So they secured the first map. Next up was Dust 2, Imperial spec. And honestly, the Brazilians just struggled in the first half, managing to win only the first, the last and 1 more round, while Spirit just dominated in all the others. After the side switch, Spirit wasted no time, quickly finishing off their opponents and sending them back home. On this day also, Heroic faced off against Mibr. The first map was Heroic spec, Mirage. From the first half it was clear that Heroic were in control, winning 9 rounds on the T side. The second half, though, was a bit tougher for them, as the Brazilians managed to string together nearly 6 consecutive rounds. However, the lead Heroic built in the first half was just enough to close out the map. Next up was Anubis, Mibr spec. Early on it seemed like Heroic were going to dominate again, as they secured 8 in the first half. Surely, again, being on the stronger side on Anubis, so it wasn't really surprising. Obviously, when the sides switched, Mibr mounted a comeback. They won round after round. Heroic only managed to take 2 in the second half, allowing Mibr to push the match to the decider. And it was Nuke, and you know what guys, it turned out to be surprisingly easy for the Brazilians. Playing on the T side, Mibr took 9 in the first half, an impressive number for the weaker side. Even winning the pistol round didn't help Heroic to make a comeback, as the Brazilians set up a rock-solid defense, securing their victory and advancing in the tournament, which means that Heroic got eliminated. Next, it was Eternal Fire versus the Mongolz, and it all started on Mirage, the Mongolz spec. And at the beginning the game looked pretty close. It was back and forth mostly, which led to a slight advantage in favor of the Mongolz. But in the second half, Eternal Fire felt a lot better. First they took 3 in a row and came ahead, but then they also lost 3. Still, they managed to get themselves together and made it to the overtimes, where everything was decided by Blitz in a clutch of 1v2. Next was Anubis, Eternal Fire spec, and right from the start they showed why they chose it. They were doing really well in the attack, but when it was 6-2 they just broke and couldn't manage to get a single round more, which led to 6-6. Still, after the sides switched, Eternal Fire started to dominate again, and the Mongolz could only respond with the round here and there. Eventually, Eternal Fire just took their map. And the decider was Inferno. There, the Mongolz started in attack, which brought them some advantage. So they got 3 in a row at the beginning, and then it was back and forth again. And with a slight advantage, the Mongolz got 7-5 at the end of the first half. But then the tables turned. Eternal Fire were leading, and despite all the efforts from the Mongolz, Eternal Fire could grab almost 7 rounds in a row. The Mongolz just couldn't do anything about it. They're now heading home while Eternal Fire will move on. Now let's move on to the quarterfinals, starting with the match between Mibr and M80. Anubis, M80's pick, but the Brazilian squad took control. The Americans barely woke up at 5-1 and then managed to string together 5 rounds, ending with a spectacular and crucial 1v2 clutch by Swisher, who survived just with 2 HP. After the side switch, M80 got lost again, giving away 6 consecutive rounds. And then Safe got this incredible ace. Once Mibr reached the map point, M80 seemed to come alive. They secured 4 more rounds, but they had no room for an error, and eventually Brazilians just took the first map, which was Ancient Mibr spec. The Brazilians started confidently, winning the first 3 rounds, but soon they faced difficulties as M80 responded with a 4-round streak. However, Mibr regained momentum towards the end of the first half, securing another streak of 3, so it ended with Mibr leading 7-5. After the side switch, Mibr's dominance only grew. M80 could only manage to win the pistol round before losing 5 straight. So the Brazilians got to the match point, and they just easily closed it out, sending M80 home. Interestingly, this was the first match M80 lost since their rebrand. Up until this point, none of their opponents had managed to take a single map of them. Now to the most important and interesting match of the day: Eternal Fire versus Vitality. And honestly, not a single one of you expected the outcome we've got. But, well, no spoilers, let's get to it. The match began on Anubis Eternal Fire spec. Things started off well for Vitality as they secured a 5-round streak in the first half. However, the Turkish Dream Team responded with a streak of 3, ending the first half in a tie. That's decent, but if Vitality wanted to win, they needed more rounds on the stronger side. After the switch, the game remained tight for both teams, but at some point Vitality managed to string together rounds and reached the map point. Just when it seemed like the map was over, Kadian saved the day for Eternal Fire with a clutch of 1v2, forcing the game to overtimes. And in the extra rounds, Vitality had no chance. The Turks regained composure and took the map pick. Next up was Nuke Vitality's pick, and they started pretty strong, winning 3 in a row on the T side. After that, the rounds went back and forth, with each team taking turns securing rounds. Eternal Fire had all the chances to tie the first half, but Major narrowly missed out on winning a 1v4 clutch, possibly their last chance to gain a foothold. After the side switch, Vitality won 6 consecutive rounds, pushing the series to the 3rd map, and the decider was Inferno. It kicked off with a brilliant pistol round from Messi. Even though he doesn't always play the best, he can step up in the most crucial moments. His performance led to a 4-round streak for Vitality. The Turks managed to win a few rounds, but Vitality's advantage was just too great. A 2-fold lead by the end of the first half. However, after the side switch, Eternal Fire came alive, winning 5 rounds in a row and even taking the lead. Vitality needed to get back in the game quickly, and Zyvu did just that, pulling off an incredible 1v4 clutch and securing an ace. But this didn't stop the Turkish squad, who pushed the game to overtimes. And these OTs were some of the most intense in recent memory. Both teams won seemingly unwinnable rounds, and even 1v3 clutches didn't guarantee victory in the following. This led to the game extending to triple overtimes, where everything was decided when Centaurus won a 1v2, putting his team on match point. The Turks didn't let this opportunity slip and secured the final round and the match. In the end, Vitality were eliminated from the tournament despite having one of the easiest brackets and being considered one of the favorites. Apex's dream of winning the EPL remains unfulfilled, I guess, and maybe next season he'll have the chance. The next day brought us the Eastern European derby, Navi versus Team Spirit. Before diving into the match, it's worth noting that Navi had previously never managed to win more than 1 map against Team Spirit according to the stats. Now into the match itself, which began on Dust 2, Spirit's pick. However, it looked like Navi had chosen the map as they easily took the first 5 rounds. They gave 3, but then also secured another 4, giving them a commanding 3-fold lead by the end of the first half. After the side switch, things got worse for Team Spirit as Navi grabbed the first 3 rounds on the T side, with JL sealing the deal with a crucial 1v3. But the highlight of the game wasn't the clutch, it was JL himself. Just look at this. Although he later, after the match, just apologized, saying that he was too emotional and that next time he'll show 2 fingers instead. Next up was Mirage, a map Navi has mastered. Spirit seemed more confident here, starting off strong by winning the pistol and the force buy. Navi responded with 3 straight on the full buys, and it all was followed by a back and forth exchange. Things shifted when Spirit with just an op and a FAMAS took a round thanks to a quadro kill from Shiro. This kicked off a brief streak for Spirit, and the first half ended with Spirit leading 7-5. However, they seemed to just vanish in the second half, as Navi won 8 rounds, only conceding 2 in the middle, which led to their victory on the second map and sending Spirit to catch a flight on the airport. By the way, the trash talk didn't end with JL's middle finger. After the loss, Magix posted that Spirit had lost to a janitor team. Meanwhile, JL took a jab at Zontex, asking if he still thought Navi was an easy opponent for Spirit. Things got heated, but then cooled off very quickly. It will be interesting to see if the players will continue the show in future matches, or if this was just a one-off. The last quarterfinal saw Liquid face off against G2. It all started on Inferno, Liquid's pick, which turned into a nightmare for the American team. Nothing seemed to go right for them, as G2 clearly prepared for Liquid's strategies. By the end of the first half, G2 took 9 rounds, and in the second half they didn't even give Liquid a chance to take a single round. The map was sealed by Monacy, who delivered a quadro kill to put the final nail in the coffin. Next up was Mirage, G2's pick, and it almost felt like the teams had just swapped maps, as Liquid took complete control. Although the first half didn't seem as one-sided because G2 started strong by winning the pistol round and the force buy, but Liquid answered with 3 consecutive rounds and then secured another streak of 4. This brought the score to 7-5 by the end of the first half. However, G2 stood no chance in the second half, as Liquid won 6 in a row, forcing the game to the decider. And it was Nuke, and G2's defense and a lackluster performance from Liquid's T-side led to a dominant 11-1 score by the end of the first half, with Melbs closing it out with an ace. In the second half, G2 quickly secured the remaining 2 rounds needed to win, and that was all. As a result, the semifinals will feature Eternal Fire vs Mibr and Navi vs G2. You can drop your predictions and guesses in the comments below. For example, I personally think that Eternal Fire will be stronger here, and Navi as well. And that's all for today, my friends. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, to drop a comment, and to follow my channel. I'm not saying goodbye for a long time. See you soon.